Few things have influenced modern human history as much as the discovery of antibiotics. At the beginning of the 20th century, it was still common to die of now harmless infections, and the average life expectancy was 31 years. All this was changed by this man, a Scottish man, Alexander Fleming, and it must be added that he was helped by several great coincidences. Fleming was a boy from a poor Scottish family, and only an unexpected inheritance from his uncle of £250 opened the door to a college education. He studied medicine at the faculty of the London St. Mary's Hospital, and if another coincidence had not interfered, he would have become a surgeon. However, at the faculty he met members of the local bacteriological laboratory who knew Fleming as an excellent shooter, and because they wanted to start a shooting club, they recruited Fleming not only into it but also into their laboratory. Fleming worked there all his life. The First World War would be quite defining for Fleming's future career. As a medic, he enlists on the French front, and there experiences the futile struggle for the lives of soldiers who were dying not only from gunshot wounds, but perhaps to an even greater extent from infections that entered their wounds. As in all of human history, no one could do anything about it. So after the war, Fleming worked even harder on researching a substance that could kill microbes. He uses unconventional methods and tries everything. When he has a cold, he puts his own snot in the bacteria bowls. When he cries, he uses his own tears. That's how he comes up with a substance that the human body produces, and he calls it lysozyme. It has some antibacterial properties, but it can't kill microbes completely. So he investigates further. His lab is full of bacterial samples. He tries different substances on them and waits to see what happens, and then comes September 28, 1928. That day, Fleming returns from a month's vacation. He checks his bowls and finds some kind of mold on one of them, which has wiped out all the staphylococcus in the area. Fleming just snorted, "That's funny," and on another bowl he dropped all sorts of microbes and put the mold against them. It's almost like a miracle. The mold kills every kind of bacteria except typhus. So Fleming sets out to find out what this miracle substance actually is. Eventually he comes to the conclusion that it is a fungus called Penicillium notatum, which is related to the species that form on aged cheese. It apparently came into the lab through an open window, which he forgot to close before leaving on vacation. It's probably the luckiest coincidence a scientist could have. Fleming names his substance simply penicillin and announces his discovery in the scientific journal. But it doesn't get much attention. There's a hitch. In the lab, he's able to grow the fungus in a mass broth where it thrives. When he pours the broth over the microbes on the lab trays, everything works perfectly. But he can't isolate the penicillin from the broth so that it can be used to treat humans. So it's useless for everyday life. So the Scottish scientist abandons his discovery to pursue something else. 10 long years pass before another, this time slightly lesser coincidence intervenes in the story. In 1938, chemists from a local laboratory, Ernst, Chain, and Howard Florey, are sitting in the university library in Oxford, and like Fleming before them, they want to find an effective substance against bacteria. They read every paper written on the subject. They read about 200 of them, and seem to have left the problem behind when they come across Fleming's paper. They're impressed and keep on searching. At first, they think Fleming is already dead, but eventually they find him in London, even in the same lab, and best of all they discover that Fleming is still keeping his penicillin meat broth going. Chain and Florey then make a huge effort to extract pure penicillin from the broth. Finally, in May 1940, they finally succeed. The method is incredibly complex, but at the end of it is a white powder that is supposed to turn history around. Already the first experiments on a mouse are a triumph. All infected mouse treated with penicillin survive, the others die. So comes their first human patient, a man named Albert Alexander, is in the process of dying of blood poisoning, but when he receives his first injection of penicillin in February 1941, his condition improves immediately, and he begins to get better and better every day. However, what doesn't happen, because production is complicated and the substance unstable, and the 5th day of treatment, the scientists run out of penicillin, and the first patient dies a few days later. Difficult beginnings, but they will eventually bear fruit. With the help of an American company, a method of large-scale production is found, and penicillin begins to save soldiers for the first time during the Second World War. It's a huge breakthrough. Military casualties are immediately reduced by tens of percent. The first military operation to be completely covered by a sufficient supply of drugs is in June 1944, the Normandy landings, and then penicillin reaches regular clinics on a large scale. In fact, we may not even be able to imagine what the trio of Fleming, Chain and Florey actually accomplished. No wonder they all three won the Nobel Prize for Medicine in 1945. In 100 years, life expectancy has risen from 31 to 70 years, and antibiotics, of which there are dozens of varieties today, are crucially important. If it hadn't been for the forgetfulness of a certain quirky Scotsman, things might have been different.